Welcome to Novel Navigator, where every story is an adventure waiting to unfold. If you're a fan of powerful plots, unforgettable characters, and immersive narration, you just found your new favorite destination. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends and family. Your support helps keep these stories alive and growing. This is Novel Navigator, guiding you through worlds of imagination, one chapter at a time. Reincarnation of the Strongest Healer Chapter 41. 41. Scorched Caverns' Gentle Wind's announcement was equivalent to a bomb, causing the entire atmosphere to turn completely silent. Even one-man media has his mouth wide open, clearly astonished and stunned by the information he received. Hell mode difficulty? One-man media nearly choked himself, clearly not anticipating this kind of explosive announcement from Gentle Wind. Yes, the hell mode difficulty, and not the easy mode difficulty. Thus, your question is a bit wrong since we're not even competing for the same thing. Her confirmation caused the nearby players to go into an uproar. What the hell? This is unreal, right? Harold Fist is attempting easy mode, but Gentle Wind was like, nah, too easy, I'm going for hell mode. Wait, what if Gentle Wind fails? Wouldn't she become a laughing stock? Fuck, who dares to laugh at my goddess? Even if she fails, she still has the courage that no one else does. Who else but Gentle Wind would attempt hell mode and announce it with such confidence? As the players started going into a frenzy, with some actively sending private messages left and right, Gentle Wind knew the effect she desired had been achieved. Just as she prepared to turn around and begin the dungeon, one-man media asked discreetly, "Wait a minute, guild leader, Gentle Wind. May I know if there's a reason for your overwhelming confidence in succeeding?" Unlike most players, one-man media seemed to have noticed a critical point and was eager to find the answer from her. Surprised, Gentle Wind merely flashed a smile, refusing to answer the question, as if she would be foolish enough to reveal such a secret to others. She spent so much money to secure this, and somewhat monopolize this. Yet they want this kind of information for free? Dream on. Scratching his head slightly, one-man media wasn't disappointed by the lack of response. If it was so easy to obtain information, then he wouldn't have come here to gather news personally. Either way, it's safe to say Gentle Wind has a hidden trump card that other team leaders and guild leaders don't have. One-man media thought, excited by this information. Meanwhile, Gentle Wind returned to her team and asked, "Everyone's ready now, right?" "Yes, guild leader." Everyone shouted in unison, including Su Feng, lest others might suspect him. His integration into her members was smooth and refined, nearly fooling Gentle Wind as well for mistaking him as a real guild member. Why can't I have a subordinate like this as well? Gentle Wind was feeling envious of the mysterious person in her private message. To be able to have such a subordinate was every leader's dream. Shaking her head, she knew it was pointless to brood over this matter as she began to select the Hell Mode difficulty. System, you have selected the Hell Mode difficulty with 19 other members. Do you confirm with the listed information? 19 other members were listed in another system prompt, and after reviewing it twice, Gentle Wind confirmed the information. Soon, a blinding white light shrouded her, Su Feng, and the rest of the members. By the time they regained their visions, they were greeted by an eerily scenery as well as a system message. System, you've entered Hell Mode in the Scorched Caverns. Defeat the boss, Inferno Tyrant. All stats are reduced by 20% due to intense heat. Debuffs increased by 10%. The Scorched Caverns were a rugged and unforgiving environment, characterized by searing heat and the ominous glow of molten lava. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur, and the ground beneath their feet was cracked and parched. Lava flows had carved intricate patterns into the rocky walls, casting an eerie orange light across the caverns. Occasionally, pockets of molten rock bubbled and spewed forth, creating small geysers of fire that dotted the landscape. The heat was oppressive, causing beads of sweat to form on players' brows as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Quickly consume the fire resistance potions that were allocated to you. It was at this time Su Feng's voice brought the rest to their attention. They had never attempted the dungeon, afraid of the penalty, as well as Gentle Wind's instruction to focus on leveling up. This was their first time experiencing such a realistic environment that affected them wholeheartedly, hence they were in a daze. Luckily, with Su Feng's reminder, they didn't have their status affected too much. Just like we agreed before, they'll take command. And whoever doesn't listen to me and causes us to fail, the responsibility is on you, Gentle Wind. Is that clear? He turned to her and asked solemnly. It was as if his persona had completely changed, turning into a fierce and dominating leader. The sudden change was so unexpected that it nearly caused Gentle Wind to falter as well. Nodding her head in agreement, Gentle Wind also held a solemn expression as she turned toward her members. You best listen and not question a thing. Our guild reputation lies in this venture. She warned sternly. Yes, guild leader. Every member fixed their posture and responded seriously. Satisfied, she gave a simple nod to Su Feng, indicating that the stage was his now. Okay, Autumn Breeze, you're a summoner, so I'm going to need you to use your level 1 skill, Lesser Elemental, to bait the enemies. Su Feng instructed. However, he wasn't finished as he continued to instruct the others regarding their respective roles. Berserkers, Gun Knights, the two classes will remain at the front at all times to defend. As for Knight Lancers, you will stay in the rear to protect the sorcerers. For the other two clerics, your only job is a heal bot, healing whoever I said to heal. You are not allowed to heal if I don't say anything, he added, being extra fierce toward the clerics. Once he finished that arrangement and was ready to commence the operation, Steelshot suddenly raised his hand and asked, "But what about me?" Being a gunner, Steelshot thought he was going to shine, but never did he expect Su Feng to completely forget about him. Su Feng stared at Steelshot for a few seconds before saying, "You're useless for now. Just stay in the center group and be protected like a docile vase." Chapter 42. Mission. When Steelshot heard that he was being labeled as a docile vase and useless, the first thing he wanted to do was rage up. Alas, Su Feng's next statement drenched his rage dry. If you continue to stall for time and ask such unnecessary questions, then I suppose you must be a spy, right? Otherwise, what is your intention in interrupting me? I'm not a spy, Steelshot quickly retorted, afraid that others might really believe in his nonsense. Then stay in the center group and shut your mouth. Su Feng wanted to roll his eyes at this person. The duration of the potion was already dwindling, yet he still dared to ask such a dumb question. Was he trying to mess with him? Seeing the situation was somewhat festering, Gentle Wind glared at Steelshot, clearly warning him to just listen and not delay them. Although she wasn't quite pleased with the tone usage from Su Feng, she understood there must have been a reason for his arrangement. After all, it seemed like he knew the dungeon quite well. She even began to wonder if his level was so low was due to him entering the dungeon repeatedly to investigate and receiving a harsh penalty in the process. Meanwhile, Steelshot grudgingly walked toward the center group and did his role as a docile vase. As humiliating as it was, he didn't dare to argue further, especially with Gentle Wind's stare. He was truly afraid of being kicked out of the guild under the suspicion of a spy when he was not. Where's the justice for Gunner? How can I be useless when I can deal tons of DPS? Steelshot cried inwardly. DPS, which stood for damage per second, was critical when fighting bosses or monsters because the more damage output you dealt, the faster they would die. Thus, he can't comprehend the reason Su Feng chose not to utilize him when he could output damage just as much as the sorcerers. Alas, Su Feng had no intention of explaining every little detail to them, especially with how much time was wasted with that small banter. Everyone follows me closely behind. Su Feng took the front position, astonishing the others. After all, he was a cleric, meaning he was an easy target, extremely vulnerable to monsters' attacks. Nevertheless, nobody dared to utter a voice of complaint when they noticed Gentle Wind keeping silent. Be cautious not to step 5 meters away from my circumference position. Otherwise, you might trigger a trap and alert most of the monsters here. Su Feng warned, treading each step carefully. Ugh, feeling this intense heat, and the structure really reminds me of the terrible days. He cursed silently, feeling nauseous at this dungeon which he had been forced to attempt over and over again to finish the detailed report. Though he can't say it didn't help him now, since he knew where the trap's layouts were based on the dungeon structure. What Gentle Wind said previously regarding the traps being random was actually incorrect. It wasn't that the traps were random, but the fact that each dungeon structure offered different trap placement. Most won't realize this in the early stages because their minds are too occupied with killing monsters and attempting to clear the dungeon. Therefore, they would miss out on trivial details regarding the structure of the dungeon. The differences in them were quite minimalistic to say, and only if one scrutinized and studied them properly would they recognize the changes. Advancing for a few more steps, Su Feng raised his hand, signaling the rest behind him to halt their movements. "Is there something wrong?" Gentle Wind spoke up and asked in concern. They had barely advanced much, and yet they were signaled to stop. Hence, she became concerned and wondered if something had gone wrong. "It's not that there's something wrong, but those monsters are searing specters." Su Feng responded, pointing at the creatures ahead. Following his pointing, Gentle Wind noticed a few flickering flames, their forms wavering and shifting like the heat haze rising from molten lava. "Those are monsters?" She gasped in shock, clearly not imagining those flickering flames that had blended in with the environment to be monsters. There wasn't even an indication of a red HP bar above their head. Normally, monsters would have a glaring red HP bar on top of their head to indicate to players that they are monsters. Just because there's no HP bar on them doesn't mean they aren't monsters. You have to remember, this is Hell Mode difficulty and not your walk-in-the-park dungeon. Su Feng softly warned. In future updates, monsters will no longer be easily indicated for the players, and they need to rely on their intuition to determine which of the monsters. After all, some monsters are friendly and could possibly give out mission quests as well. To make things even more complicated, some of these monsters could have good diplomatic relationships with NPCs, and you would be in deep water for assaulting one. Anyway, they are extremely troublesome because they can easily alert our presence to every other monster with their unique ability, Infernal Vigilance. He explained, with this ability, they act as vigilant sentinels of the scorched caverns, their spectral essence attuned to the slightest disturbances in the environment. When intruders approach, the searing specters emit an eerie wail that reverberates throughout the caverns, alerting nearby monsters to the presence of enemies. To simplify things, they're the so-called watchdogs. What's with all this pointless talking? We could just kill them all no matter how many arrive. We're just wasting time here while the duration of the potion is decreasing still. Autumn Breeze suddenly interrupted, feeling that Su Feng was being overly cautious and extra. From the start, it had been him leading and there were zero fights. In fact, they couldn't even move a bit further away from him, lest he would scold them. "Autumn Breeze, I know your mind isn't that bright, and you have a grudge against me. But can you read the system mission again for the dungeon?" Su Feng asked sarcastically. "The mission is to defeat the boss, Inferno Tyrant, and not some other monsters." Chapter 43. 43. Searing specters upon being ridiculed by Su Feng's statement. Autumn Breeze's face flushed with redness. To be told that she was not only ignorant of the main objective, but was also insulted for her not-so-bright mind. She truly wanted to give him a punch to the face. It was just a shame that she couldn't rebuke him since what he said made complete sense. The system mission indeed only stated the defeat of Inferno Tyrant and nothing else. Realizing she was at a disadvantage, Autumn Breeze could only grumble lightly and kept her mouth shut, unwilling to speak up again. Who knows if Su Feng would scold her again? It would have been beyond humiliating to be scolded repeatedly, in front of her fellow guild members no less. Not even Gentle Wind would scold her so harshly and directly like this. "Anyway, how do you think we should proceed?" Gentle Wind calmly asked, paying no mind to the farce. Being a guild leader was naturally taxing to one's mentality, having to manage many members. Thus, she had gotten used to members having disputes among others. No need to worry too much. It's just a little troublesome, and we can easily surpass this obstacle if someone can listen to my command well. As Su Feng finished his sentence, he turned his attention to Autumn Breeze, his intention being quite clear as to who he was referring to. Autumn Breeze frowned slightly as she twitched her mouth. "Am not incapable of following directions. Okay. Good, because whether this will be easy or difficult depends on your performance. No pressure." Su Feng shrugged. Gritting her teeth, Autumn Breeze vowed to follow his direction to the T, ensuring he wouldn't get any excuse if it failed. "You can rest assured. So long as you make the command, I'll oblige it," she told him seriously. Nodding his head, Su Feng was satisfied that his provocation worked. By provoking her in this manner, the percentage of failure decreased substantially. After all, she wouldn't want to detour from his command unless she wanted him to have another chance to reprimand her. "First, activate your lesser elementalist," he commanded. Without even bothering to question, Autumn Breeze summoned a lesser elementalist. The lesser elementalist materialized as a spectral figure, its form flickering with ethereal flames. Its body appeared humanoid, composed of swirling fire and ash, with fiery eyes that blazed with intensity. Wisps of smoke trailed behind it, leaving a trail of smoldering embers in its wake. "All right, now navigate your lesser elementalist to approach closer to the searing specters," Su Feng instructed. Although worried about being discovered with such action, Autumn Breeze still controlled her lesser elementalist. Just right, when the lesser elementalist subtly attracted the attention of the searing specters, Su Feng commanded her to unsummon. Thankfully, her reaction speed was quite fast and unsummoned lesser elementalist. Nevertheless, she held a scornful expression at Su Feng, believing he was messing with her. "First, you asked me to summon it and then desummon it. Just what do you want to do?" She screamed internally, wanting to ask these questions but refrained from doing so. Though it wasn't needed when everyone else began to notice the searing specters acting weird. They seemed somewhat confused, swirling left and right with no precise directions. It was at this moment that Su Feng signaled for the sorcerers to be ready. "When those searing specters stop moving, immediately unleash your lighting arc at my command. Split into a team of 2, and remember, the interval is around 5 seconds, so ensure you don't mess up," he warned sternly, his eyes focusing on the swirling movement of the searing specters. With Su Feng focused entirely on the searing specters, Gentle Wind quickly assigned a team of 2, with 3 sorcerers on each side. At the same time, Gentle Wind was paying more attention to the actions of Su Feng. Unlike most players who would simply rush forward and kill monsters, Su Feng was cautious and meticulous. He was unwilling to alert the monsters or exert too much of his team's stamina. And maybe if it wasn't because of her members' constant distrust of him, forcing him to explain most things, they would have advanced quite far by now. It seems like I need to discipline them further. They have been too lax and filled with quite the ego. Gentle Wind exclaimed inwardly, feeling ashamed of her terrible insight into how fragile her members were. Just a few sentences or actions were enough to irritate them. How could one manage a guild when their members are so easily manipulated or provoked? "Now, fire your lighting arc," Su Feng commanded. Instantaneously, Gentle Wind, along with the other 5 sorcerers, fired their lighting arcs simultaneously at their respective targets. Each of the 3 sorcerers' lighting arcade was fired on one of the searing specters and the other 3 on the second one. The lighting clashed with the searing specters, creating a spectacular display of crackling energy as it arced through the air, illuminating the cavern in a dazzling array of colors. The searing specters writhed and recoiled from the onslaught, their ethereal forms wavering under the intense assault of magical lightning. Inspecting their movement closely, Su Feng promptly activated Blinding Strike, as well as Sacred Fire. A few seconds later, the searing specters ceased their struggle, dissipating into particles. Phew! Didn't alert the other monsters. Su Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Despite knowing the outcome already, it was still a bit worrying in case something unexpected occurred. "All right, let's move forward," he ordered, not giving Gentle Wind and the others a chance to question him regarding his knowledge in dealing with these searing specters. After all, The actions he did were a consecutive effect that required intensive knowledge of the monster and when to act upon it. It might have looked simple and easy on the surface, but just a slight miscalculation would have resulted in disaster. Time slowly passed by, and Su Feng finally led the team safely to a passage with 3 different directions. Here comes the annoying part. Su Feng sighed inwardly, feeling exhausted at this particular process. Chapter 44. Baiting strategy. Facing 3 different directions available for pathing, Su Feng wanted to curse the person who developed the terrain. No matter which path you chose, it would all lead to a dead end. Well, somewhat of a dead end. He called it a dead end because there would be monsters appearing that were out of their league temporarily. Although still killable, the time consumed on killing would be tremendous, meaning he would have to cough up more fire resistance potion for them. To be forced to consume another one was something Su Feng was unwilling to do. After all, the potions aren't just useful in the Scorched Caverns, but can be useful in many other places as well. There are 3 passages here. What route should we take, Lin Feng? Gentle Wind asked softly. Rubbing his chin softly and turning his attention to her, Su Feng suddenly detected Steel Shot from the side. Right, he's a gunner. His lips curled upward as he stared intensely at Steel Shot. Meanwhile, Steel Shot felt a chill running down his spine when he realized Su Feng was staring at him. He might not have been able to see his expression since Su Feng was still wearing a mask, but he could somehow sense a malicious smile was being flashed upon him. What does this bastard want now? Steel Shot wondered silently. Stop staring at me and look away. I didn't even go against your instruction and stayed in my position obediently. Steel Shot, Su Feng suddenly called out, prompting the latter to nearly have a nervous breakdown. What is it? Steel Shot asked, albeit somewhat cautiously. Earlier you said, I forgot about you. So now I'm giving you a chance to shine. He replied courteously. Alas, his courteous tone was equivalent to a devil's whisper to the current Steel Shot. After witnessing the crazy ordeal and how Su Feng dealt with the searing specters so efficiently, he was now afraid of him. It wouldn't be an exaggeration that he would meet his demise once Su Feng decided to target him specifically. You must be kidding, Senior Lin Feng. Steel Shot laughed awkwardly. I'm just a small character, and am willing to remain put in the center group. He added, going as far as using honorific to address him now. No one else within the team blamed Steel Shot for his change of attitude. None of these people here were fools and had been playing numerous virtual games before the release of Divine World. Thus, they knew exactly how fearsome and terrifying Su Feng's ability was with that flawless fight. To accurately calculate and predict the enemy's actions in a split second was no easy matter. Are you trying to waste my time again, dear Steel Shot? Su Feng questioned. Come over here so we can proceed further. He instructed. Steel Shot wanted to refuse, but when he noticed his fellow comrades, especially those berserkers and gun knights from the front, stepped aside to create an open path for him, he wanted to swear at them. Traitors! You all are goddamn traitors. Why are you pushing me to my death? Without a way to retreat, Steel Shot swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he attempted to gather his courage and walked towards Su Feng. Once Steel Shot was in front of him, Su Feng patted his shoulder and said, You're courageous, Steel Shot. As a gunner, you have the highest agility among us here, so you will be given a very important job. Before Steel Shot could even react, Su Feng turned around and pointed at the right passage. Go over there and attract aggro from a monster. I believe in you and your survivability. Attracting aggro was a game terminology that meant the player would actively seek and provoke the monster into targeting them only. And usually, these types of action are done by warrior classes in Divine World, given they can withstand several hits compared to other classes. Hence, being assigned such a job when he was a gunner, Steel Shot had the impulse to fire a bullet at Su Feng. However, what pained him deeply was the fact that he didn't hear a single rebuke from his fellow comrades. He even turned to Autumn Breeze, seeking assistance, but she merely tilted her head sideways, clearly ignoring his plea. Didn't we agree to be in a pact against him, Autumn Breeze? Why did you ditch me? Steel Shot cried inwardly. All right, stop wasting time, big boy. We got work to do. Su Feng suddenly said, going behind Steel Shot and kicking him in the butt, propelling him forward to the right passage. Despite feeling a somewhat pained sensation in his butt, Steel Shot's emotions were more damaged, having received full-blown emotional damage. Discarded and betrayed by his fellow comrades, Steel Shot could only cry bitterly in his heart as he ventured deep into the right passage. As Steel Shot's presence slowly vanished from the dark passage, Gentle Wind asked, "Are you getting revenge on him for the earlier instance?" "If I'm going to be petty, then I wouldn't have done just this, Gentle Wind." Su Feng responded casually. As a gunner, his agility stat is higher than us all, so his survivability is naturally higher. Also, we need to save as much mana as possible. By sending Steel Shot alone, he alone would help save the 19 of us from depleting our mana. He added, explaining his actions to her. Nodding her head in understanding, Gentle Wind realized she seemed to have misunderstood him. However, she quickly retracted her thoughts once she heard his next sentence. "Now this next action of mine is me being petty." Su Feng chuckled menacingly. He turned to Autumn Breeze and ordered, "Autumn Breeze, summon 2 lesser elementalists and have them rush toward the left and middle passage respectively. Ensure that you anger them and retreat to the right passage." Speechless, the crowd was immensely stunned by the wickedness of Su Feng. Can this even be identified as petty anymore and not murder? Don't look at me like that. This is called a baiting strategy, one for all. Steel Shot's sacrifice will be remembered in our hearts. Su Feng patted his chest lightly, seemingly trying to glorify Steel Shot's magnanimous deed. Chapter 45. Wailing noises. Although Su Feng's tactic could be said to be despicable, none of the players attempted to speak it aloud. Yes, it was despicable, but it was also necessary and logical. Instead of causing the entire team to have their mana severely depleted, they would only have one person now. And since Su Feng had chosen Steel Shot for the job, and not them, they were inwardly glad. At the same time, they wanted to thank Steel Shot for attracting Su Feng's pettiness, allowing them to escape this crisis. Seems like no one has any objection regarding my plans. Su Feng nodded his head after a few moments. Naturally, he expected no one to complain about his plan, especially when he emphasized it was done by pettiness. However, what they didn't know was that he truly believed Steel Shot would survive the ordeal since he buffed him with his skills during that kick. Bless Protection and Blessing Valor were given to Steel Shot. Additionally, his arrangement of having Autumn Breeze attract the other 2 monsters in the passage was to assist him instead. Most players always seem to have a misconception of a dungeon containing monsters that attack players only. But what they didn't know, monsters among each other in the same dungeon could also be enemies. This was the reason why Su Feng had no hesitation in throwing Steel Shot in the open whilst giving an excuse to conceal this critical information. When the time came for the questioning, he would merely feign ignorance and praise Steel Shot's great fortune for escaping death. He only had a business contract with Gentle Wind and not some kind of good relationship, as if he would divulge so much important information to her for free. Step 1 and Step 2 are done. Now the final step is merely the Inferno Tyrant boss. Su Feng thought to himself, feeling satisfied by the current result. The spawn of the monsters was indeed randomized, and the lava beasts especially are troublesome monsters, having been capable of inflicting a burn state on players. Luckily, it didn't need to confront them and avoid them with his careful movement. However, Su Feng didn't think his luck would continue when fighting the Inferno Tyrant boss. After all, this troublesome boss could summon its own lava beasts, and it was not something he could prevent. "I'm afraid half of these people would die during the boss fight," he concluded in his mind. Time slowly passed by, and Autumn Breeze successfully baited the monsters out of the passage, albeit with some delay as instructed by Su Feng. Remember to wait until one of the monsters enters the right passage for at least 10 seconds before bringing the second one out, Autumn Breeze. Su Feng warned again. The timing was crucial here to ensure the monsters wouldn't meet each other until they were in the right passage. Otherwise, a fight would commence in front of their very eyes, and Su Feng would have to give his condolences to Steelshot's unfortunate sacrifice. Stay hidden. Su Feng ordered a swift retreat when Autumn Breeze gave him a signal. Sure enough, a second later, a ferocious beast filled with magma in its body rushed out and chased after the lesser elementalist controlled by Autumn Breeze. "It's about to die, Lin Feng," Autumn Breeze mumbled, feeling anxious. "Don't worry, just ensure it's near the entrance of the rite passage before it dies," he reassured her. Nodding her head, Autumn Breeze did as told, and just right when it reached the entrance, the ferocious beast slashed its mighty claw against the lesser elementalist. Afterward, it snorted coldly, hovering around before entering the rite passage, mistaking it as its habitat. "Good job. Now when's the next one arriving?" Su Feng praised and asked. "My other lesser elementalist is not that lucky. It died before even reaching the exit." Autumn Breeze smiled bitterly. Her control of her summons was clearly lacking experience, so it was inevitable that she had failed. In fact, it was already nice that she succeeded with one. Patting her shoulders softly, Su Feng chuckled. "If it fails, then it fails. No need to brood over the matter. It's already amazing of you to manage to accomplish one of them." Contrary to everyone's expectations, they didn't expect Su Feng to compliment Autumn Breeze. Having witnessed his strict demeanor since entering the dungeon, they thought he would begin scolding her. "Are you being sarcastic?" Even Autumn Breeze could not help but suspect him of speaking sarcasm. "You overthink too much." He flicked her forehead and turned around. "Since two monsters are now occupied in the rite passage, it's time to advance forward through the middle passage. Don't let your fellow comrades' honor be wasted," he announced, taking the lead once again. As for the rest, they were somewhat speechless by his shamelessness. To utter something like a comrade's honor without any shame when he practically forced Steelshot to be a scapegoat was unbelievable. "Let's go," Gentle Wind told her members, clearly reminding them to not think about Steelshot's situation. What had been done was done, and there was no going back anyway. "Yeah, it's Steelshot's fault for being a gunner class and having the highest agility among us," Autumn Breeze chimed in, causing the rest to look at her in surprise. "You were clearly the person most against Su Feng, but now you change sides so easily? Could be you have been brainwashed because of his compliment?" It was just a shame that they couldn't continue to ponder over the matter when wailing noises echoed from the rite passage. "Sigh, they'll treat Steelshot to a meal after this. Otherwise, he might really hold a grudge. What's the point? He's definitely holding a grudge, so just save your pocket money." You got a point. To be fair, he kinda deserves it for his behavior earlier anyway. "Let's stop talking and follow Lin Feng. I don't want to be the next Steelshot." Almost unanimously, the guild members of Gentle Wind seemed to have decided to follow Su Feng's direction without question. Chapter 46. Smooth Route. While Su Feng was busy inside the dungeon, Scorch Caverns, outside of the dungeon, was filled with numerous players. Is it true that Gentle Wind is tackling the Hell Mode difficulty currently? Harold Fist roared at a nearby player on the scene and inquired. Why, yes, Gentle Wind made the announcement, and something occurred when she entered the dungeon. The entrance blinked bright red 3 times. The unlucky player quickly explained the situation, unwilling to become a target for Harold Fist. Damn it, Harold Fist clenched his fist angrily. How is she so confident? I think she might have stocked up a lot of the new potions that were listed in the auction market, Ardent Lance suddenly said, opening his auction market. So far, there have been 10 batches sold in the auction market, and the buyers always chose the buyout option. We only managed to buy 3 of the 10 batches sold, meaning there are 7 batches sold to unknown buyers. He explained, fuck, if it weren't for those useless bastards that can't even buy the silver coins fast enough in the exchange of currency interface, would we have lacked the funds to buy them all out? Harold Fist was frustrated, feeling overly annoyed by the situation. He had lots of real-world currency, but he couldn't even purchase in-game currency fast enough thanks to other players' swift fingers. Are these all single players? He wondered silently, having believed that was the only way they could train their fingers to be that fast. I've treated those useless bastards too well, and they are now enjoying life. He'll need to punish them later on. Just as Harold Fist was thinking of punishing his incompetent subordinates, Ardent Lance suddenly exclaimed in shock, "Boss, someone is selling silver coins in batches again, but the asking price is too much." Too much. Harold Fist held a disdainful expression. With his wealth, how could the asking price be too much? Checking on the exchange of currency himself, Harold Fist nearly choked on his own saliva. What kind of greedy bastard is this? He shouted in a disbelief tone, scratching his head. The anonymous person was selling each silver coin for $15,500, whereas a batch of 5 silver coins for $75,000. The prices previously were merely 1 silver coin for $1,500 and 5 silver coins for $6,500. Yet the current asking rate was multiplied times higher than it. We were not forced to buy it, boss. Ardent Lance swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, "Let this anonymous person suffer the consequences for asking such an exorbitant price. I doubt anyone would buy his silver coins." Slap. Astonished, Ardent Lance didn't know why he was slapped by Harold Fist. "Fool, if I don't buy it, and others buy it for the potions, then what am I supposed to do? Buy it all." Harold Fist exclaimed loudly. Harold Fist, am not short of money," he announced, making sure everyone present was able to hear him clearly. "Understood, boss." Ardent Lance nodded his head and quickly purchased the silver coins, albeit with a slight heartache. This was money that he couldn't even earn with his current salary. Yet this anonymous person managed to earn it in one go. "They're all purchased, boss," Ardent Lance reported, but halted himself when he saw a new batch of silver coins instantly listed up again. Boss, there's another new batch." Silence. Harold Fist didn't know how much money he was going to burn this time to prevent others from having an advantage. "Buy them all, and then camp on the auction market. We'll start doing the hell mode difficulty once we gather enough potions." Gritting his teeth, Harold Fist was prepared to lose a lot of money. After all, everything would be worth it once he snatched the first clear achievement of hell mode difficulty. Not even for a second did he believe that Gentle Wind would be capable of such a feat. Gentle Wind is clearly making a risky bet, and she's going to pay the price dearly once she fails miserably, he thought to himself, as Harold Fist was standing ferociously by the entrance, seemingly terrorizing the others that no one was allowed to enter the dungeon. Back in the dungeon, Su Feng suddenly halted his movement. "What's the matter, Lin Feng?" Gentle Wind quickly asked, her tone somewhat cautious. Every time Su Feng made a pause, it meant something unusual occurred. "Oh, nothing. I was just surprised by something." Su Feng laughed it off and subtly turned off the system notification temporarily regarding players purchasing his coins and potions. What a jackpot! Some idiotic rich folks really purchased them in bulk. It was indeed nice to have Gentle Wind make the announcement and cause the others to get a sense of pressure. He exclaimed inwardly, feeling blissful to have trapped such a filthy, rich idiot. Originally, he planned on delaying the dungeon for as long as possible within the potion's duration because he wanted others to actually purchase his listed items. But now that a rich fool had done it in advance, Su Feng no longer needed to delay it. What was the point of bulk buying if the first clear achievement was already taken? There was only one of them, so even if others decided to redo it, there would be 0 achievement given to them. In other words, once a guild or adventure team obtained the first clear achievement of any difficulty, it would be useless to attempt it. "Are you sure there's nothing wrong?" Gentle Wind raised an eyebrow in concern. Nodding his head, Su Feng said, "Yeah, there's nothing wrong, and I have a feeling we're going to have a smooth route ahead of us." "Smooth route?" "Uh-huh. I think we might encounter the boss and avoid most of the fighting." Is that so?" Although stunned by his remark, Gentle Wind didn't plan on being negative either. It would indeed be a good thing if they were going to have a smooth route after all. Chapter 47. Inferno Tyrant. With most of his objectives completed now, Su Feng no longer delayed their journey by acting overly cautious. Instead, he confidently advanced forward while secretly inspecting the surroundings. As each inspection went on, the more confident Su Feng was, given he was familiar with the mechanism and the monsters. The passage wasn't that long and dangerous, given the monster was baited out by Autumn Breeze already. What made it difficult was the endpoint of the passage. At the endpoint, there would inevitably be monsters camping, and he would not be able to use any loopholes or tricks to avoid them. However, knowing it and divulging the information were two different things. He needed to be careful when divulging the information. All right, near the endpoint will be monsters camping there. Su Feng turned around and explained. I've explored the Hell mode difficulty earlier and managed to reach the endpoint before being killed, so we must be extra careful. He added, revealing fake information on how he was so knowledgeable. Aha, I knew it. Autumn Breeze suddenly clasped her hands. I knew something was fishy when you seemed quite familiar with the environment and the monsters. It all makes sense now. You're level 2 because of the severe death penalty while exploring the dungeon, right? She added, feeling quite proud of her deduction. Nodding and scratching his head, Su Feng's action was no different than admitting it. Alas, little did they know that the current Su Feng wanted to lift Autumn Breeze up for such great assistance. Geez, you really are wonderful. They'll just let you mistakenly believe that your statement is the truth. He exclaimed inwardly. Thanks to Autumn Breeze's statement, no one else, including Gentle Wind, suspected him otherwise. After all, there was no way a person would suddenly think of a reincarnation possibility as the reason for him being knowledgeable. Thus, the only plausible and logical reason here was that he attempted the Hell mode difficulty dungeon multiple times, prompting him to be stuck at level 2. Anyway, let's not talk about this trivial matter and focus on the important things. Su Feng tried to brush the matter aside, acting perfectly in line with someone who had been caught red-handed and wanted to avoid embarrassment. Hee, sure, team leader. Autumn Breeze held a gleeful smile, remaining ignorant of the truth. Ignoring her tease, Su Feng's aura subconsciously changed to a domineering and fierce one. Since he was no longer required to stall, it was time to get serious and end this dungeon. Gentle Wind, Autumn Breeze, and the rest of the members were able to sense this change from Su Feng. The pressure was palpable despite not actually feeling it physically. Despite being completely stunned by the aura of Su Feng, they managed to compose themselves rather quickly as they followed him closely. Sometime later, they reached the end point of the passage, and glancing from above, they all noticed that underneath them was like a mini arena stage. And in the mini arena stage, there was only one monster present, Inferno Tyrant. The Inferno Tyrant loomed ominously on the arena stage, its massive form towering over the area like a living inferno. With molten lava coursing through its veins, the creature radiated intense heat, causing the air around it to shimmer with waves of distortion. Its body was encased in rugged, obsidian-like armor, adorned with glowing runes that pulsed with fiery energy. Twin horns protruded from its head, gleaming like polished onyx, while its eyes burned with a fierce, otherworldly glow. Each step of the Inferno Tyrant sent tremors rippling through the cavern floor, and its deep, guttural roars echoed off the rocky walls, instilling fear in Gentle Wind's guild members. With every movement, it seemed to command the very elements themselves, bending fire to its will in a display of raw, primal power. Hey, are we seriously supposed to defeat that? One of Gentle Wind's members, a berserker class, asked in dismay. Stop being a coward, rage hard. Autumn Breeze snapped out, slapping rage hard on the back of his head. You're a berserker, and it's your job to confront these types of monsters. If you can't even stand your ground, then you might as well delete your account and remake a new class. Rage hard, upon being reprimanded by Autumn Breeze, merely flashed a bittersweet smile. Weren't the other people feeling the same sense of dread upon witnessing the Inferno Tyrant's appearance? The only wrong thing he did was ask if it was possible to defeat it. It was a question that any normal person would have asked. There's no need to chide him for being frightened by the Inferno Tyrant's appearance, Autumn Breeze. Su Feng suddenly chimed in. The Inferno Tyrant has an aura of intimidation that instills fear toward nearby players with its mere presence. The most affected ones are tanks such as Gun Knight, Knight Lancer, and Berserker. He explained, saving Rage Heart from the embarrassment. Is that so? Autumn Breeze was taken aback by the explanation. She then turned to Rage Heart and apologized, admitting her fault straightforwardly. Sorry about that. Rage Heart. It's fine, Vice Guild Leader. Rage Heart smiled and scratched his head, not blaming her a bit. Although Lin Feng said the intimidation affected tanks the most, you can see the others are trembling slightly. Yet Lin Feng is still calm and collected. Our mentality simply needs work, he added, pointing at his fellow comrades. Sure enough, Autumn Breeze realized the others were intimidated as well. And when she glanced down, she noticed her hands were trembling subconsciously too. So I was intimidated as well. Autumn Breeze was shocked inwardly. She then glanced at Gentle Wind and noticed she was in the same situation. However, when she turned to look at Su Feng and saw him completely normal, she was stunned. How is he fine? Her eyes nearly popped out from the astonishing scene. Literally, all of them were intimidated, but Su Feng was perfectly fine. Just when she began to wonder what secret he was hiding, Su Feng turned to them and cast Blessing Valor. Chapter 48. Raid start as Su Feng cast Blessing Valor toward the team. The intimidation received from the Inferno Tyrant diminished substantially. You've cast Blessing Valor on yourself since the start? Autumn Breeze seemed to have been enlightened from her earlier confusion. Su Feng was happy to take the credit for such and nodded his head in agreement. Thanks to her deduction once again, she allowed him to avoid answering that it was because he had been baptized, which caused him to have high resistance to intimidation. Indeed, I thought your cleric would know better to cast Blessing Valor from the start, so I didn't bother to give the command. But alas, who would have thought? He added, shaking his head, seemingly blaming himself for his lack of insight. However, everyone knew he was indirectly calling their cleric useless and inefficient for not knowing what to do. Others were still fine with the subtle disappointment, but the two clerics wanted nothing more than to bury themselves alive. Just how embarrassing was it to be called for their slow reactions? Ahem, what do you suggest we do now, Lin Feng? Gentle Wind faked a cough at this time and inquired, most likely to avoid any embarrassment from happening to her members. To look into it further, she was trying to hint to Su Feng to not go overboard with his words, even if it was true. Nodding his head, Su Feng had no intention of blaming her members either. He was merely trying to warn them to have faster reactions next time. After all, if he wasn't baptized, then he would have immediately cast Blessing Valor the moment they were about to reach the endpoint of the passage. This was common sense and, typically, the standard for players. But maybe it was because they didn't expect how realistic the divine world would be and failed to adapt to the mechanics temporarily. Listen, when we initiate the raid, everyone must listen to my command precisely. Don't you go and attempt to do your own things, meaning even if your teammates are about to die, you are not allowed to do anything unless I tell you to. Is that clear? Once again, Su Feng heavily emphasized to them to listen to his command precisely. He knew how to defeat such a frightening boss, but that was on the basis that everyone cooperated properly and didn't attempt to do any hero play. Rest assured, Lin Feng, my guild members will follow your command. If anyone is caught disobeying, then he'll remove them from the guild. Gentle Wind reassured him, purposely deepening her tone in her last remark. Good, then let me explain some things first. The Inferno Tyrant has a total of 10 active skills, with the most deadly one being Incinerate. Incinerate targets a single player and incinerate them instantly. In other words, the unlucky player who got targeted will be insta-kill. He revealed some bits of information, lest these bunch of people would be no different than headless chickens. Pondering over the information, Gentle Wind asked, is it possible to manipulate who gets targeted? Despite being suspicious of how he knew such information, she knew better than to ask such sensitive questions. Instead, she wished to prioritize the success of the raid. As expected of Gentle Wind, Su Feng chuckled. Indeed, I can somehow manipulate the boss to target a player, but who do you wish to sacrifice? Stunned, Gentle Wind began to knit her brows, seemingly in deep thought. Clerics are definitely impossible, since we're short of them already. Sorcerers are needed for huge DPS, so it can't be that. Steel Shot is probably a goner, so it's unfortunate as well. She sighed inwardly. In times like this, when she needed steel shot to be cannon fodder, he was not there because he was used already. After debating for a few seconds, Gentle Wind smiled cheekily at him. I suppose you can decide among whom to be sacrificed. You're the team leader for this raid, after all. Passing the ball back to Su Feng, he seemed relatively calm by her cheekiness, almost as if he expected such a response already. For a guild leader to decide who to sacrifice, it was indeed a difficult question. After all, no matter who she chose, the person chosen wouldn't feel happy about it. However, if it was his choosing, then the chosen person could only curse their terrible luck. Since Su Feng already made a bad reputation for himself by mercilessly using Steel Shot as a scapegoat, what else could he not do? Very well. Then Gun Knights, Knight Lancers, and Berserkers come to the front. Su Feng commanded. He then turned to the clerics and instructed them to cast their buff to the tanks only. Their initial reactions were filled with surprise, given the norms were supposed to split the buff between the tanks and the damage dealer. Yet Su Feng's instruction focused heavily on the tanks. Nevertheless, they didn't dare to question it and quickly cast their buffs to the tanks. And since their levels were higher than Su Feng's, their buffs were naturally better and had more varieties than him. Sigh. Curse that damn system for imposing such a debuff on me. I didn't even get caught by the NPCs, so why must it interfere? Su Feng was frustrated by the situation, but there was nothing he could do about it. The system was an intangible being. Fighting against it was no different than asking a person to punch the air as if the air would receive any damage whatsoever. Shaking his head, Su Feng prayed for a massive level up from the abundant experience points of the Inferno Tyrant. All right, tanks, activate your skills and hop into the arena stage. Su Feng raised his hands, officially starting the raid. Let's go. The tanks roared in unison as they raised their weapons and activated their skills. Roar! The Inferno Tyrant roared in fury upon spotting the intruders in its habitat. At the same time, the arena stage was soon being filled with magma, astounding the others aside from Su Feng. What a burning blaze skill cheat code. Why can't I do the same? Su Feng lamented silently. Chapter 49. Burning Blaze. The Burning Blaze was a cataclysmic event triggered by the Inferno Tyrant, marking a significant phase transition in the battle. As the boss rage intensified and its power reached its zenith, the very fabric of the arena stage began to warp and twist under the overwhelming heat. Fiery fissures erupted from the ground, spewing molten lava and scorching flames into the air. The once stable ground trembled and cracked, giving way to rivers of magma that snaked across the arena, creating hazardous terrain. What the hell is this? One of the berserkers uttered in disbelief. We haven't even attacked, but the boss is already changing the stage. Just how messed up is this game? Another berserker voiced their complaint, clearly astonished by the scene. They merely leaped down from the top and had yet to even initiate an attack, but the boss was filled with rage already. However, their astonishment would only prolong further when the changes hadn't stopped. Amid this chaos, pillars of fire erupted from the ground at irregular intervals, casting flickering shadows across the battlefield. The air became thick with smoke and ash, obscuring vision and making it difficult to discern friend from foe. As the burning blaze consumed the arena, the temperature rose to unbearable levels, causing them to sweat profusely and struggle to catch their breath. The crackling of flames and the roar of molten lava drowned out all other sounds, instilling a sense of dread and urgency in those who dared to challenge the Inferno Tyrant. Stop being distracted by the environmental change and focus on the front. Su Feng's voice echoed throughout the stage as he cast Blinding Strike at the boss. The Blinding Strike doesn't do damage, but it affected the Inferno Tyrant's eyesight slightly, prompting the Burning Blaze to stop temporarily from altering the stage further. The environment is now hostile against us, and we will continuously take fire damage over time. But fret not, our fire resistance potions are decreasing the damage, so do your best and attack the boss. He added, telling them to remain focused. With Su Feng's wake-up call, the Gun Knights, Knight Lancers and Berserkers stopped overthinking as they charged toward the Inferno Tyrant. Enjoy the strike of mine. The Berserkers screamed simultaneously, activating their skill, Crushing Blow, which delivered a powerful melee strike, dealing bonus damage. Originally, the skill was also supposed to knock back the opponent, but given the Inferno Tyrant's status as a raid boss, that effect was nullified thanks to its immunity. Nevertheless, the damage was dealt, followed by the Gun Knights that activated Rapid Shot, firing a quick succession of bullets at the boss. As expected of a raid boss, my shots are dealing peanut damage. One of the Gun Knights clicked their tongue at the mediocre outcome. The glaring large red health points, HP, bar of the Inferno Tyrant still shone brightly, with barely any changes to it. No need to be too disappointed. We could just chip it down slowly. A Knight Lancer snickered coldly, activating Shield Bash and striking the boss with its shield, hoping to stun them. Alas, the Inferno Tyrant's immunity was still great, and the stun lasted only for a brief second before it started to move again. Just as it was ready to retaliate against the tanks in response to their puny damage, Su Feng was able to detect its actions first. Sorcerers now, fire your spells at his right molten arm. He ordered decisively, detecting the Inferno Tyrant's movement and determined it was trying to use Magma Burst. If the boss successfully activates it, the Magma Burst will cause a volcano eruption, dealing area of effect, AoE, damage and knocking the tanks back. Thus, Su Feng could not allow it to use it, and commanded the sorcerers to attack, now to interrupt its sequence. Thankfully, the sorcerers were efficient and unleashed a collective number of spells at the boss, right molten arm as instructed. Lightning Arc, Firebolt, Frost Nova. As each of the sorcerers fired their spells while calling the skill name, Su Feng was somewhat left in a daze. Are they seriously calling their skills aloud? Just be discreet about it when using them. He was dumbfounded by their actions. Only an idiot would be calling out their moves to let their opponent know about it. Luckily, the boss was just a program monster, and it was still in the early stages of the game. Otherwise, their spells would have been rendered useless if the boss was capable of deflecting or defending them. It was a pity that Su Feng had no time to correct their behavior, given the Inferno Tyrant was further enraged by their collective actions. Everyone retreat back to the center, and clerics, start activating your protection skills. Tanks, use your shield to defend the front and side. He yelled out. A brief seconds later, everyone followed Su Feng's instructions without hesitation, forming a defensive stance. Just when everyone barely managed to finish forming their defense, the Inferno Tyrant made another move. As it unleashed another one of his active skills, the very air seemed to ignite with blistering heat. Flames danced across its massive form, wreathing it in an aura of searing fire that sent waves of scorching heat radiating outward. As the boss reared back, a deafening roar echoed through the cavern, heralding the impending onslaught. With a mighty roar, the Inferno Tyrant unleashed torrents of flame from its gaping maw, casting molten fireballs and searing projectiles in all directions. The ground trembled beneath the relentless barrage, and their defensive stance was shaken repeatedly. Some players were forced to dodge due to not having enough coverage. As they weaved through the inferno, their clothes and armor were singed by the intense heat. The air crackled with the sound of burning embers, and the acrid scent of smoke filled their nostrils, making it difficult to breathe. Don't panic and focus on healing the tanks. Ensure the tanks survive this ordeal. Su Feng cast his own healing toward the tanks, focusing solely on the one receiving the most damage. Chapter 50. Infernal Presence. A few minutes had gone by since the Inferno Tyrant launched its retaliation against them, and the damages were already far beyond what they could imagine. My shield's durability is dwindling at a rapid rate. One of the gun knights said in desperation, clearly anxious about the shield breaking down at this critical juncture. The intense heat of the Inferno Tyrant was displayed crystal clear to them. The durability of their shields decreased with each passing second. What they were afraid of was not losing their shield, but losing the very protection that was shielding them from the molten fireballs and other searing projectiles. No need to worry about your shield's durability. The boss attack will stop in another 3 seconds. Afterward, there's an interval of cooldown where we will have the chance to unleash another round of offensive stance. Su Feng calmly told the group. His voice was usually annoying to them, to say the least. After all, he was not exactly a likable fellow, especially with his conduct and harshness. But in the current moment, his voice was like a reassurance sound, blessing them with confidence and reliability. Being able to hear his calm and collected tone despite the drastic situation helped reassure them greatly. Thus, with the encouragement from Su Feng, the tanks up front persisted in their defense, followed by the other two clerics' constant support. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity despite only 3 seconds having passed, the Inferno Tyrant stopped its fiery retaliation. Now, sorcerers, attack with everything you got, and remember to avoid those molten armors and attack the molten flesh itself for more damage. Tanks, try your best to immobilize the boss. It might not show much effect on the surface, but ITLL work at the very least. Su Feng quickly instructed. Meanwhile, the cleric was about to buff the tanks again, but was halted by Su Feng. Stop. Your mana is probably low now, so use this time to drink your mana potion. I need them to replenish above 50% by the next rotation. Yes, leader. Unbeknownst to the two clerics, they had started subconsciously addressing Su Feng as the leader instead of his name. After all, what they cared more about was capabilities, and Su Feng displayed his capability amazingly well throughout this ordeal. Their initial displeasement with him, as well as his somewhat arrogant way, was quenched. Sometime later, the glaring large red HP bar of the Inferno Tyrant was starting to diminish and could be spotted. It's working, Autumn Breeze exclaimed. This boss is really deserving of its status of being Hell Mode difficulty. Don't be too happy yet, Autumn Breeze. Gentle Wind suddenly said, casting numerous of her spells at the molten flesh whenever her cooldown was gone. Look at Lin Feng's posture. He's been staring at the boss for quite a while now. Indeed, I think he's trying to predict the boss' next move. She responded, but then a question popped up in her mind. How was he able to deduce the boss' next move? Did he study its attack pattern in such a short amount of time? Being able to predict a boss' next attack pattern and determining the best course of action was the norm for any player wanting to do a raid. However, the problem here was that the time required to do so was consuming. The dungeon also had a level requirement that they must be level 2 to enter. In other words, she arrived at a discovery that Su Feng must have been continuously tackling the Hell Mode difficulty repeatedly, prompting him to lose many levels in the process. Yet that didn't deter or dishearten him from his objective as he continued to tackle the dungeon. From his reaction to his clear and concise command, he must have extreme persistence and endurance to keep it up. Autumn Breeze thought to herself, realizing there were many more secrets in this person. Simultaneously, Gentle Wind was also having such thoughts, except she was more wary about the mysterious person she had been messaging. The mysterious person remained anonymous in her contact and was able to send out such a capable and frightening subordinate to assist her. If the subordinate is already this terrifying, then what is this person's true capability to subdue such a subordinate? Gentle Wind wondered silently, feeling nervous about the situation. Damn, did I overdo it? Su Feng noticed the two women were starting to get distracted and sensed they were glancing at him occasionally. It wasn't that he wanted to show off, but if he didn't command the team properly, then it would have just resulted in a wipeout. Thus, in a situation like this, along with the contract agreement, Su Feng couldn't risk getting a wipeout result, nor could he stop concealing his ability. Whatever, they might be suspicious for now, but they won't do anything about it. Shaking his head, Su Feng stopped worrying about an event that would happen in the future. After all, the most important task currently was to defeat the Inferno Tyrant. Focusing back on the battle, the Inferno Tyrant was infuriated by the constant bombardment of spells, along with the tank's attempts to immobilize it. Just at this moment, the air slowly thickened with the suffocating heat of the boss aura, and the players found themselves struggling to maintain their focus. Sweat poured down their faces as they gritted their teeth against the oppressive pressure, their movements sluggish and uncertain. Despite their best efforts, their attacks faltered and veered off course. Their accuracy was hindered by the searing heat that surrounded them. Spells fizzled out mid-air, their trajectories warped by the infernal presence that hung heavy in the cavern. It's getting harder to aim our spells at the molten flesh. One of the sorcerers cried out, her face dropping beads of sweat. The intense heat emanating from the boss made it difficult for players to concentrate, reducing their accuracy and increasing the likelihood of their attacks missing. How troublesome! Su Feng knitted his brows, realizing the boss was much more clever than he had anticipated.